And, you know, it's figured out that I like modern marvels and history.
Oh yeah, that's a good one also.
All those, right? So
I love modern marvels.
I'd be watching like the History Channel or something, watching aliens, right? Now when I turn YouTube on, or when I turn YouTube on, it pops up 4 hours of boring history to fall asleep.
Oh my gosh. It knows what you're
3 hours of medieval history to fall asleep to.
It's like, I'm okay that you know me, just don't call me out like that.
Yeah, exactly. It was an unsaid understanding between the two of us.
But then what happens is it plays its 3 hours of boring history to fall asleep to, and then it comes on with this video that's just like running water. You know, about 3 o'clock in the morning. There's all this running water.
A lot of hotels now have TVs where you can log into your YouTube, your Netflix, and watch stuff. And so I started putting on I found some it's like a 12-hour fireplace with like light jazz and stuff. I was like, that's perfect. It's just like calm in the background. Doesn't. Yeah.
And when I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, then it goes to Bloomberg. Each time I wake up, okay, where's oil, where's gold? Where's the interest rates?
Yeah. He's not listening to Bloomberg himself.
No, I don't like Bloomberg.
That guy was proof that money can't win elections.
Welcome home, Gary. Is that? Welcome home. Thank you. I missed last week. Yeah, I know.
You went to Greece, right?
No, last week was Holy Week, Easter Week.
Oh, okay.
So I was out on Thursday. Easter Sunday. Yeah. We zoomed off from PTO back to the real world. Back to the real world, right? Well, good to see you.
Didn't you have a trip coming up though?
I went recently back in January.
Oh, okay, that's what I was thinking of.
By the way, I need to ask you a question today after we did orange break.
We decided to set the mood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Calm people down when they get in.
We wanted to do that when I walked in.
Thank you.
There's your entry.
We'll pick some better one for your upcoming coronation.
Yeah.
That's right.
I just thought it was my new hearing aid. I was
Skeleton.
piping something in for a hearing aid coming in.
Avenged Sevenfold.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
The first time I heard that, I was like, oh, somebody took guitar lessons.
Right.
Because I listened to the early Avenged Sevenfold, and then when that one came out, I'm like, oh,
Yeah, they got
somebody
better.
got a guitar teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, there were one of the few newer hard rock groups.
Yeah.
Okay, they're pretty good.
Yes, they showed that they matured.
Mm-hmm.
Came of age.
Same thing happened with Five Finger Death Punch too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very much so. Planning on being here a while?
He's got enough rations
We're
for all
taking a
of
lunch
us.
break.
That's just breakfast.
That's for the
got
afternoon
lunch
session,
in
because
there.
it's gonna go into the evening.
I'm not sure how long this meeting will go.
Yeah,
It's got all the hallmarks of.
based
I always
on
get
an email
worried
I
when
got
John's
copied
gonna
on
see it.
yesterday
You're gonna be here a while.
So I figure if he's got a suit on, it's a short meeting. He's not gonna be comfortable.
No, I'm actually
See, if
very
you
happy
come in
to
pajamas
say
and
I
we don't
had
work.
stopped wearing a suit because the suit was falling off of me because I lost a bunch of weight and it no longer fit. And I would need like 2 pairs of suspenders to hold the damn thing up.
It's a good problem.
And this week I was really frustrated because I haven't gone shopping to go get a new one. And I was looking forward to that, right? Getting refitted and hearing the smaller numbers. And I said, you know, I wonder if these suits still fit me. That have been hanging in the closet that I was too fat to fit in. And they had been dry cleaned and sitting there and not used. I pulled the plastic off of them, put them on and said, son, they fit.
Save you some money. So you should save
He's a new man.
the skinny clothes.
That's right.
I did opt to ditch the skinny suits that I had, in favor of the more traditional one.
As long as you're not wearing one of those Jimmy Fallon jackets. You know?
And I had that great pleasure. I had Easter weekend went in the clothes store, tried on another pair of jeans. I'm like, oh, hey, look, I'm 2 sizes smaller, yay. My back is most appreciative of it.
Yeah, well, you have to tell me your secret. Is it eggs?
Well, I do eat a lot of those, yeah.
Eggs help.
The number 1 secret was Bud Light, getting rid of that, because it's not really.
Oh, I thought you been starting it.
And then number 2 was I ditched, I won't say all, 95% of processed foods.
That's just good for you, period.
So I got rid of, potato chips and Doritos and Fritos and crackers and all of that kind of stuff in favor of fresh vegetables and fruits. And then I eat a more heavier protein, less carbohydrate, not no carbohydrate, but less carbohydrate diet. I knew if I tried no carbohydrates, that would never work.
Liz, are you ready?
I'm ready.
You ready?
I didn't know I was in charge.
You
You're
didn't
sitting in
know
a hot
that?
seat.
You didn't know that?
It's all good.
Okay. I'd like to bring the meeting to order. Stand for a moment of silence, pledge allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We have the roll call, please.
Jimmy Girardi,
Here.
Christopher Poole,
Here.
John Moody,
Here.
Matthew Munn,
Here.
Derek Conklin,
Here.
Chris Williams, representative by Leanne Devine,
Here.
Chairman Charles Gray.
Here. Okay, do we have any minutes? All right. I don't think we have to go through the whole rigmarole here, do we?
You don't have to do all that.
Yeah.
It's a workshop.
Okay, Terry, welcome back, and
Thank you.
you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Local Planning Agency, Mr. Chairman. Today's Local Planning Agency Comprehensive Plan Update Session or Workshop will focus on the Pasco 2050 chapter, Pasco Moves, which is the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. This is the second session on Pasco Moves. The first was last week on April the 9th, wherein we discussed changes to the vision roadmap as well as the corridor preservation tables. The Pasco Moves chapter, like all the chapters of the comprehensive plan, have been worked on by numerous industry-related stakeholders, the county attorney's office, and county departments, including in this case the Planning, Development, Economic Growth Department, Go Pasco, the Pasco County Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the Transportation Engineering Department, which were significant participants and contributors in the development of the chapter. In addition to this, the Planning, Development, and Economic Growth Department facilitated the reviews for these teams and the industry-related stakeholders in order to capture their input and facilitate the development of the draft. Moreover, it bears noting that we received significant community stakeholder feedback on the question of our transportation infrastructure needs within the county through thousands of public comments and surveys via the Pasco 2050 project website, as well as the various community workshops and open houses that were held across the county in the last 2 years. Today we are presenting the Pasco Moves chapter, though our plan is not to go line by line, as in the other sessions. We intend to present the big ideas for the chapter and provide you all with an overview of the new policies that were added to the proposed comprehensive plan update and any potential overview of deleted policies because either they were completed, they were made obsolete by state law changes, or were no longer necessary. With me today is Nick Uren, the county engineer, who will continue on as one of our subject matter experts here with the Pasco Moves chapter, and also Hyatt Mazzilli, the principal planner within Planning Services, who is the project manager for the comprehensive plan update. She'll walk us through the chapter overview. You should have with you your materials, the draft chapter, a redline version of it, and the policy change tables that illustrate the various edits that have been made in this draft of Pasco Moves as compared against the current comprehensive plan's transportation chapter. You should also have the data and analysis information that supports the goals, objectives, and policies of the proposed chapter. If there's any questions, we will be able to, we'll be available for discussion, as well as our counterparts within Go Pasco, the Planning, Development, Economic Growth Department, and I believe also the MPO will be present here today. Finally, this is the third workshop in our spring series here. The first workshop was on Pasco Serves. Last week was the second workshop on the first part of Pasco Moves. Today is the second workshop for Pasco Moves, the last one for that. In that regard, we have 3 more workshops that are upcoming, which are to discuss the Pasco Invests chapter, the Pasco Partners chapter, and lastly, the Pasco Grows chapter. We've been working with our stakeholders on these throughout the winter and spring now, finalizing particularly the Partners and the Grows chapters. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hyatt for today's presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning, gentlemen. Hyatt Mazzilli, Planning, Development, Economic Growth. And just Terry has mentioned, at the April 9th workshop, we walked through the first part of Pasco Moves, which focused on the technical updates to Table 7-2, the corridor preservation table, and the associated maps. Today, we're continuing that review with the second portion of the chapter, where we'll focus on the guiding principles and policy framework that completes the Pasco Moves chapter. Before we begin, I just want to show the updates that we had made based on the feedback that we got from the first portion of the discussion of this chapter. We have updated the roadway vision map to reflect the change in the east-west, the new roadway that we are proposing. We changed the S-curve. It was double S, and now it's only one S with a bigger radius based on the feedback that we got. And also we made edits to the table to reflect that realignment. if we do not have any comments about this update, we can move to the rest of the.
I'm not sure if my memory served me correct. Kitten Trail, I thought that was being removed from the map.
The Kitten Trail? I'll defer to Nick or Terry.
With regard to Kitten Trail, I think the internal discussion was that we were going to keep Kitten Trail on the vision roadmap.
What would be the necessity with now adding Bolton and having Denton?
Adding an additional collector in terms of Bolton, you mean?
But collecting from what?
So Bolton has been talked about to be added onto the Vision Road Network as a collector road to build up the urban transportation network in an area where there's been discussion for potential employment generating uses.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and that's mainly you need a road that's capable of handling the truck volume, et cetera, the trucking volume, and adding Bolton provides an additional route that also doesn't truck him past single-family homes that may be on New York and Kitten to the south.
Well, that's my concern with Kitten, is that Kitten is predominantly single-family homes. And I don't know if you've driven out there, but I mean, there are a lot of nice estate-style homes. In fact, there's a beautiful horse farm and training facility out there. And I would just hate to destroy those people's way of life out there when doesn't seem to be any other impetus. There's not like a bunch of cross streets that join into Kitten to use it as a collector. It just seems to me it becomes a cut-through street, and it's a street that is predominantly residential in character, whereas Bolton and Denton out that way are not. And I completely agree with the idea of Bolton. That makes a lot of sense to me.
So the LPA, is there a preference that Kitten Trail be removed from the Vision Road Network? You could always control the type of traffic that runs on Kitten Trail. There's no truck route, for example.
Well, I'm just trying to avoid making it a cut-through. And I guess it doesn't all have to be decided here today, but I'm guessing we're gonna be here a really long time this afternoon talking about Kitten Trail and the type of traffic that currently exists on Kitten Trail and whether we really want to turn that into a major roadway corridor for the county. I'm not sure that makes sense, but I guess we'll see what happens this afternoon.
Well, these aren't labeled on this map. Which one is these is Kitten Trail?
This right here.
Okay, yeah, I want to make sure. So
It's
both of
below
those-
that. It's below the dashed line, Patty.
Just right here.
That's Kitten Trail, yes.
And that intersects with Denton, yeah.
And then the north-south dotted line is the extension of Colony, right?
Yes, at that point, it becomes, I believe, Coyote.
Yeah. But it's Colony down below the completed portion, right?
Yeah, south of Hudson.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was your suggestion, Terry?
Well, internal discussions considered keeping Kitten Trail. If there's concern about the truck traffic That's one reason why we're trying to establish Bolton as a vision collector, but you can also restrict the type of traffic that's moving on Kitten Trail, or the alternative, that is a potential here as well, is to remove Kitten Trail from the Vision Road network. The road is still gonna be out there, and people are still gonna use it the way they've always been using it for the last however many years.
Right.
Terry, is there a comp plan amendment that's going with the Denton Place MPD? I can't remember.
On Bolton,
No, there
No.
is not a comp plan.
There's not a related.
there's not a comp plan amendment on the Denton case this afternoon. They had one, but they withdrew that one.
I'm just wondering if the LPA will have another opportunity to revisit the Kenton issue. I guess their next opportunity would be when the full comp plan comes back to them for action.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, we can work to address it here in this session today, because we are talking about the Pasco Moves chapter. Or then again, at the actual
The issue
consideration.
of it being a collector, I mean, a collector's a mainline road that collects traffic from other intersecting streets. You don't have a bunch of intersecting streets out there.
Right.
So Bolton would
And it's-
just
and
stop
it-
at Coyote.
Bolton
Right,
will
and then
stop at
especially
Coyote.
once you get east of Coyote, you're into the rural character area. And that's what I'm getting at is, you know, are we going to preserve the rural character of that area?
The answer is yes on that.
No, I'm not sure why we would want to do that. That just seems like it would destroy the property values and the serenity of that area out there. You know, I can remember one day, one of our lady commissioners called me and she said, "John, I'm driving out Kitten Trail, I've never been here before." She said, "This is amazing, there are a lot of beautiful homes out here." To which I was shocked she'd never been out there on Kitten Trail, but that just doesn't seem an appropriate place to do a collector road, my opinion.
Can I ask a question? I realize I'm putting maybe Nick on the spot, but do we know when the model runs were done for this area, and I realize you would never know for Bolton because Bolton's being added, but do we know what kind of volumes were being shown on Kitten and Denton? I'm just trying to figure out what the removal of Kitten's going to do in terms of volumes for the area.
Yeah, good morning, Planning Commission, Nick Uren, County Engineer. The short answer is it won't have an effect on regional conveyance because the road, as was previously noted, will exist whether it's on the Vision Road network or not. I don't have in my head the number that was attached to that segment of Kitten Trail in the model forecast. But it's a two-lane road today, and it's going to be a two-lane road in the future, whether it's on the vision plan or not. The only investment we would potentially seek to make, because it remains on the vision road, is an investment in the pedestrian and bicycle trail system that is contemplated on vision corridors. Whereas in the non-vision roads, we just leave them as vehicles only. So functionally, it's not a significant difference in the way that that facility would perform. That being said, I'm not certain how to ascertain the will of the commission as a whole in a workshop discussion like this. But if the commission desires for us to remove it from the vision plan network, I don't think regional conveyance will suffer as a result of that request.
Well, it seems like if it's there already anyway, and it's gonna remain a two-lane road, then if we take it off the Vision Road system, it's not gonna have any negative impact. as you
I
said.
think what Nick is saying is it won't have a negative impact on vehicular movement. What it might negatively impact is whether the county is gonna spend any money to upgrade the bicycle pedestrian network on the road. So
Right.
we would never spend any, we won't spend any more money on upgrading the road, even from a bicycle pedestrian capacity,
Right.
if it's not in our network.
I will mention, just as a reminder to the planning commission members, there was a bicyclist, a fatality, a bicycle crash on Kitten Trail just west of Cobra, which is the access road to the school site. And we are investing in a sidewalk on the south side of the road at that location
just
to
talking
provide
about that.
pedestrian access to the school. I think really candidly, the practical implication of removing it is that any development proposals that may come before this commission later in the day, or later in the year, or later in your terms of service, we would be less inclined to direct them to provide access to a road like Kitten Trail if it was not a Vision Collector road. And we would be less inclined to mandate that they invest in pedestrian infrastructure along Kitten Trail if it was not a Vision road. And that may be the primary impetus for considering removal.
I think you'll hear this afternoon that the people like their country road. And then I think if you look at the pattern of lots and tracts out there, other than the project we're going to listen to this afternoon, there's no substantive development track out there that would be the impetus to create these facilities. And these are people that live on 1, 5, 10 acre tracts, they've got their horses.
So it's just a question of whether they would like to have the bike trails and such as that. Or it's not important to them.
So I guess the question is, did you want to make a recommendation to staff now, or wait until after you've heard from the public this afternoon and
Well, that would be a reasonable thing.
to wait until after you've heard from them?
I'm only one voice. I think there'll be many out here later
Crying
today.
in the
but-
wilderness.
From a school board perspective over here, we would want to see sidewalks. There are a lot of people who walk and enter from that side, so there would be a concern if this wasn't on there and then that somehow doesn't allow for sidewalks or prohibits or hinders that, that would be a concern.
Yeah, if this project gets approved, there's gonna be a lot of kids cutting through the back there over to Kit Trail to walk over to the school.
And I actually have a question for John. I've been on Kitten Trail, but I'm not there super often. But do you know how many people really travel that road to cut through? And I know that might not be something you know, but
I have no idea how many people, what I'm trying to avoid is it being used as a cut through. Okay, I do think Bolton is a good idea. If you look at the development pattern along the proposed Bolton, we're going through an old county wastewater treatment plant, and we're not going through an area where people have developed properties in an estate residential style. I don't have any objection to having pedestrian facilities where they serve Hudson High School, but you guys, they only walk so far, right? This is much longer than 2 miles of roadway, clearly in and around the school, that's appropriate. But I think as you get farther and farther out on Kitten, I think the people are going to express that they prefer their country road.
Well, I think it's a good suggestion that we wait till the afternoon session.
Yeah, I think you should, yeah, like I said, I'm one voice, you should hear from, there's lots of other opinions.
Well, Terry, can you and Hyatt just maybe make a note that when the full comp plan comes back to ELPA, that somehow you call out this issue so that
the status of Kitten Trail.
Like it, yeah.
Status of Kitten Trail, the planning commission can make a decision at that point
Okay,
about whether to either keep it or not.
we can do that. Yeah. So then we can, shall we continue with the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
My apologies.
If, I had one other question about the map. St. Joe Road as an arterial, how does that mesh or conflict with the northeast rural area guidelines we have?
St. Joe, yeah, St. Joe's an arterial. I think St. Joe today is an arterial road, but it's,
When I think on the ultimate lanes map, it's 4, it's 2 now. And I know a lot of argument we got about developments along St. Joe Road. That's got to be 2 lane. It's going to be 2 lane forever because it's a scenic highway. So does making that 4 lanes conflict with the northeast rural plan?
Are we
Well-
changing anything as it relates to St. Joe Road?
Yeah.
We are.
so we're.
Yeah, I think it went from 2 to 4 ultimate lanes.
That's right. It's a two-lane collector in the current complex.
So in the current comprehensive plan, it's a 2-lane collector, and in the, if I've heard that correctly. And then the proposal here is to make it a 4-lane arterial.
Right.
In this version of the Vision Roadmap. Would there be a conflict? I mean, it's a change, not
Yeah.
necessarily a conflict, because what would then happen is a updating of the subsequent documents, like in the land development code, the scenic road information in the land development code for St. Joe Road would be updated to reflect a 4-lane scenic road.
I think
Assuming that this would be carried
There may be
forward.
policies and roads that you might have to alter to reflect this change.
Um,
I could be wrong.
Is it one of the scenic roads that's not supposed to be white currently?
St. Joe currently is noted in the land development code as such, yeah.
I could have sworn there was a policy
Is there scenic
in
roads?
roads or maybe even in moves that talks about the limits, roadway expansions in the northeast rural area.
Has this been shared with stakeholders in the northeast rural area? I'm guessing our regular speaker, Ms. Hazelwood, probably would have something to say on the subject.
I don't have the growth chapter.
Probably more than 3 minutes if we gave it to her.
Probably more than 3 minutes.
Let us double check the draft goes really quick.
Okay.
Remember, she lives on A Nice Place.
And it is that, an aptly named road.
It is a very good question.
I mean, I'm done for today.
No?
I'm good.
Just getting started.
Yeah, we're just getting started. We got a whole day ahead.
Hmm. Okay, so I'm seeing, I just pulled up 604.4. It says, subject to the policies of FLU 2112 and TRA 235, the number of necessary travel lanes for the rural scenic roadways is limited to 2 unless otherwise required and consistent with Chapter 7, Transportation Element, Table 7, Forward A, Pasco County Corridor Preservation Table. So I guess that goes back to the, if we update the table, then it updates that limitation within the northeast rural area.
Yeah, the land development code is more descriptive and likely at this, if we compare it against this map, more restrictive
Okay,
than what this map is showing. Not necessarily a conflict though.
okay.
But if the corridor preservation tables are talking about an ultimate 4-laning of St. Joe, then we would consider, we would have to think about what kind of adjustments need to be made to the land development code to accommodate the comprehensive plan's vision for St. Joe. In terms of the actual scenic road policy in Groves, it would be, at this point, the numbering is Groves 3-1-13, which I know it's not in front of you all, but it does not identify number of lanes or collector arterial status. It just identifies what the scenic road should be looking for in terms of preserving existing canopy trees, planting new canopy trees, landscaping requirements, so on and so forth, as well as the identification of which roadways are the scenic roads, which include County Road 52 from Sharber Road extended east of Dade city limits, St. Joe Road, Blanton Road, Bellamy Brothers Road, and Trilby Road to the extent that they were located in northeast Pasco County rural area. And then there's the rural roadway system policy. That states specific collector arterial and rural residential roads shall not be expected to require, nor are they planned to receive capacity improvements over the 25-year planning period unless otherwise consistent with the Pasco Moves chapter. And then that policy is policy Groves 3-1-15, and that does reference the corridor preservation tables that have been discussed at the last workshop.
Okay. And
Well, what I see is, it's, I'm gonna go back and maybe David can ask the question better, just like he asked about Kitten Trail. What does that do to our roadway network if that remains a 2-lane scenic roadway rather than a 4-lane roadway?
driving 52 every morning, it would help. Because 52's loaded heavy.
I understand that.
Well,
But
this is the same question I think I asked at the last meeting. I asked, what happens if we don't have a parallel reliever to 52? And I think Nick answered that question. I think he's basically saying St. Joe is the part of that parallel reliever system. I think Nick effectively answered the question at the last meeting, but I'll let him answer if he thinks otherwise.
Can you repeat the question, David?
So, Commissioner Moody is asking what happens if we don't have St. Joe as a 4-lane road? And I believe we had this discussion at the last meeting that you're considering St. Joe part of this parallel system to 52. And we had the discussion about whether 52 fails in the build-out scenario. Is that, I guess my question is, would you give the same answer today that you gave last time?
I would.
Okay.
Can we use these or no?
Yeah.
Kind of a workshop set. Oh, there we are. Yeah, same response. We're looking at ways to provide a parallel reliever and connectivity to the employment center that is Dade City. And so that's part of the discussion of what does the regional transportation network need to entail. As far as the forecasted volumes associated with St. Joe Road, I think the rural land uses along the corridor suggest that a 2-lane road would provide adequate capacity for the predicted demand. And then the question becomes, has the model accurately predicted how busy State Road 52 will be in the future in order to anticipate the need for parallel relief from a facility like this?
I'm not sure I understood your answer. So are you saying that it's sufficient at 2 lanes?
I'm saying our travel demand model says 2 lanes is enough on St. Joe, but that the model might be wrong.
Well, let me add to what he said. He also said that the model shows the 52 fails, but that model may be wrong also.
Well, anything could be wrong. We don't have a crystal ball.
I think I think what, to paraphrase what I think Nick is saying, is that the reason he created St. Joe and this blue road was to relieve 52, not because St. Joe was failing.
Right, I understand St. Joe. I understand St. Joe is not failing. And I understand why you would want to have a parallel reliever to 52. This sort of goes back to the whole Kitten Trail discussion, in that, are we going to just forsake these folks' way of lives for a road that right now we're not sure we need or we don't need?
I mean, I don't think there's a lot of impact for the dotted blue line area.
Well, I do think St. Joe Road is a little different than Kitten Trail. But, I mean, I've driven on St. Joe Road. I'm not sure the people who live on St. Joe Road have quite the same expectation that those that live on Kitten Trail. It's a fairly, I mean, it's already operating as a collector road, clearly.
Absolutely. My concern, and I'm not saying it's a no, just a concern, is that I think in general, when we start building bigger and better transportation facilities, development pressure follows it. Remember the days, David, you'll have to think way back to this, when we were planning the widening of State Road 54, and we all got told, we will never let State Road 54 become the next US 19. Well, what have we got? We got the next US 19 on State Road 54, and that's my concern. Or now all of a sudden we go out here and do this and we declare this thing's gonna be an arterial roadway, then are we going to see a sea of comp plan amendments and proposed development changes out there to allow development along that roadway? That's what happens. Development follows roadways.
Of course, we're years away from seeing that road actually being widened.
But then you could also see a future where development comes in along it, or requests along it,
Yeah.
and they say, well, they made it a vision road, obviously they were anticipating this.
Correct.
I mean, I think to me, if the model shows that 2 lanes works, but it might be wrong, even if it might be wrong, and I think showing it as 2 lanes is probably.
So does the model show that the 2 lanes work with the addition of this blue dash line?
Nick is,
So does the model for St. Joe, that's whenever he's done with Perry, so does the model for St. Joe say that it works with the addition of the blue dash line, with the addition of that Vision Road? Because obviously you add that, then you're gonna get extra traffic from the Hudson area that's gonna be using St. Joe that wasn't using it before. So it may work now, but will it work with the addition of that blue dash line?
So, the answer I'm gonna give is not the answer you want me to give you. We are not doing scenario modeling as part of this comp plan update.
Got it.
So the model that we are using to generate recommendations and these are part of the corridor preservation table. So we're saying it may behoove us to preserve the ability to have this additional capacity in the future, not to construct it, but to preserve our ability to have it, is based on predicted congestion levels on the State Road 52 corridor from that model run. We have not performed multiple iterations with changes to the network to anticipate what diversions would look like and how much relief would the blue line and potentially investment in additional capacity along the St. Joe corridor provide to the State Road 52 corridor.
What does it take to do that?
it takes time and money. Right? Did you say how much time and money?
Well, that might be the follow-up question. It just seems to me that you're saying, well, we're taking a giant swag at what we need for roads when we actually do have the ability. I don't know what the limitations of these models are. Doesn't sound like you have a whole lot of trust in them. But at least if the models show that, yeah, we need this, at least there's something to support that. But right now, it sounds like we don't really have anything to support that.
Yeah.
I think the more important thing too for this is that, and I'm not sure if I heard the answer to it, but has there been public stakeholder involvement? Because I guarantee if Ms. Hazelwood was in the room right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Think of
My
yeah,
head would
half a
explode.
dozen others as well.
Yes.
So I think that's an important aspect. I think, that needs to be addressed if it hasn't.
That's a big change to that area.
Yes, absolutely.
You talking about widening St. Joe?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we know how protected Ms. Hazelwood is of that area and others up there, so.
Yeah, it seems like that would be the only reason to justify it is if by adding that dashed blue line there, whatever extra added traffic that's pumped
Sure.
into St. Joe demands that extra lane. Because as it sits, it's probably fine.
I do appreciate what David says too. It's, you drive that road, it's a whole different scenario than driving Kitten Trail.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
So I mean, the availability to widen that road is there, but I still think the public stakeholder involvement is pretty important for that road. Got some very contentious cases on that road.
Well, and we'd have to look
Cases
at,
that we've denied.
we'd have to look at the connection too between the dashed blue line and St. Joe. So that downward dog leg that we'd probably have to straighten a corner, and it's a 90-degree corner right there.
There's also some sort of interesting dynamics to, because I think if you designate it as an arterial, doesn't it control access spacing as well? Doesn't it make it less, mean there's less connections to the road if it's an arterial?
That's right. Access connections are required to be farther apart, which results in fewer connection possibilities to the corridor.
So it arguably means possibly less development would connect to it?
The question of how much activity each driveway would have to support is a difficult one to answer. But there would be less driveway connections permitted to the corridor. I don't know if that means that there would be less activity at those driveway connections.
There's also the question of, sort of to the point that Nick was making, there's also the question of the agricultural policies that we could consider, or that we will be considering when Pasco Groves comes forward as part of the Northeast Rural discussion, and how and what type of development we would want to even allow. You could build the road as small or as large as you like, but at the end of the day, the land use policy is going to control what actually goes out there. So ideally, you build the road, I think we would all be in agreement that ideally you build a road that's necessary and right for the land use pattern of the area,
I
whatever
hear
that
you.
is currently or tomorrow.
I hear you, but we come here every 2 weeks to change the comprehensive plan.
Well, I'm not just talking about the future land use, though. There are other policies that can, we have agricultural primacy policies, for example, that can help influence whether or not it's even appropriate for a flue change to take place.
Well, I think we've shown that when we want to make a text amendment to the plan to accommodate something, that can happen, so.
And we'll say too, that just for the sake of the workshop, that when it has come to the rural areas, we've been very conservative and very reserved in terms of any kind of flu change happening therein. Basically only following exactly what the comprehensive plan may tell us. We had that Res 1 case a few months ago. But in any other instance, it's only been at the direction of either the Board of County Commissioners or some kind of fact on the ground. There was a presence of utility on the periphery in one case where we actually made a recommendation to change the boundary or to change the intensity or density of the flu.
Let me ask.
So it's very rare, in other
Can I
words.
ask, Nick, can I ask you one question? I guess even as a collector, it could still be 4 lanes, right?
That's correct.
But you made it an arterial because of the connection to the interstate.
The concept of the arterial roadway network is that it would provide connectivity to a Bellamy Road corridor as a grid network relieving State Road 52 and to the I-75 corridor, as well as at the east end to the Dade city limits. And the reason we terminate the arterial designation at the County Road 52 21st Street intersection is because once you go east of that, you have the grid network within the city limits that provides the ability to disperse trips into the city instead of concentrating all of them on the one corridor.
And to the west, you terminated it at Bellamy because
There's nothing west of Bellamy.
well, there's this other road that's sort of,
Right, but if you remember, that other road's on the northern boundary of the Tampa Bay water,
Yeah.
Pinellas County wellfield property, that if you extended St. Joe due west, you'd go right through the middle of it.
Plus a bunch of
I'm talking
wetlands.
about this north-south road, I don't know what that is.
Oh, the one just west of I-75.
The dot road?
The north-south road that goes up to the Donner Road, what is that?
That's the extension of Old Pasco Road that's currently part of the county's comprehensive plan.
Now, I'm talking about St. Joe Road,
We're Bellamy Brothers.
That's Bellamy Brothers still.
This is still Bellamy Brothers, right?
Yeah, it's Bellamy
I
Brothers
guess
up.
it's Bellamy Brothers.
Oh, yeah, there's a jog in Bellamy Brothers corridor. It
Okay,
goes
so-
west for a few hundred feet and then it continues north.
Yeah, right north of
I
St.
guess
Joe.
what I'm
There's a
trying to
short.
figure out is, why is it that St. Joe and or Bellamy Brothers are not an arterial up to the Blue Road?
That's the question that I asked.
That's a subjective conversation. I think that realignment of the east-west corridor north of 52 also resulted in it being designated as a 2-lane collector road. And generally speaking, we don't have any, in the proposed update to the comp plan, we do not have any 2-lane arterial roadways. If the ultimate corridor intention is a 2-lane facility, then it is not able to be designated as an arterial.
So is it, I guess you didn't upgrade that beat to 4 lanes because is the thought that the traffic would sort of split at that point between Bellamy and whatever that east-west road is?
If you're talking about what would happen if trips are coming from the west on the new blue corridor.
Yes.
They could go south on Bellamy, they could go east on Johnston, which is the existing 2-lane road that this intersects with and aligns to.
So you're basically saying that neither one of those roads need to be 4 lanes because the traffic would split?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the blue line is, again, it's shown as blue because it's proposed as a controlled access facility, but it is an ultimate 2-lane controlled access facility
Okay.
to minimize the environmental impact and the footprint of the corridor through that area.
So I guess what I'm asking then is, if St. Joe Road did not connect to the interstate, would you still recommend it be an arterial?
I would connect those two. I would say if there's no connectivity to I-75, then the need for a 4-lane corridor is significantly diminished.
And if we have a connection to I-75, isn't it logical to foresee people will want to develop all 4 quadrants of that interchange, as this happens with every other interstate interchange? I think that's the issue, is in that location, we gotta decide whether we're gonna do that or not.
Because we've already got we've talked about the employment center up at Blanton in 75. We've already seen that talked about even before the road's been, with just a connection. It's not a great connection with the demand for development there.
Yes. I just think if you do that, that's going to apply development pressure in an area where we're trying to steer development away from.
I'd agree with that. And I mean,
That depends on your perspective, because.
Yeah.
I understand,
Because.
it's a balance.
Yeah, because even in Northeast Pasco, when we adopted the Northeast Pasco Rural Protection Area, we carved out the employment center as.
But that's my point, it's not that far of a reach to figure out, okay, if I connect St. Joe to I-75, well, then someone gonna want an employment center right there.
I'm just saying there is precedent for carving out the adjacent interstate ramps from
I get it.
protection. And that's all I'm saying.
right.
I get it.
And just because it's a St. Joe related, how does the corridor protection that this would direct us to make, does that affect the current work that's gonna go on to realign Meridian to St. Joe? Because that's gonna be I think everything I've seen there is like a 2-lane intersection. Do we need, would that necessitate any additional corridor there for that project now, or no?
I think you're asking about the DOT managed
Yeah.
project to realign St. Joe / Sewanee, which is a very interesting backstory to that. The west leg at the St. Joe 21st Street County Road 52 intersection is actually a city-maintained roadway for a few thousand feet, and then it becomes a county road just west of the intersection. And that's why the Sewanee name is part of that project. The project to realign and create a 4-leg intersection is, I think it's compatible with what is envisioned
Okay.
as part of this proposal. But again, I want to commend the commission for wrestling with these questions, because this is the exact question that we wrestled with the staff, trying to figure out, should we include these items as a recommended component of the update to the comprehensive plan?
And knowing that you gave this a lot of thought, I mean, if we think it's imperative to have the ability to maintain corridor on St. Joe, I think we should accompany it with some, I mean, I know the Northeast Rural Area Policy kind of gets to it, but something plainly that says this isn't intended to drive development or support development. It's purely as an alternative to, as a parallel reliever to 52, if needed. I don't know if that's feasible or not, but just something that kind of gives us what we might potentially need someday, but also tries not to open the door to use it as justification for wanting to develop near or on that corridor, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Because I think we've heard it before where some justification, well, it's a vision road, it'll support this later.
I think an outstanding question I have that we're not really talking about too is this dotted line, this blue dotted line we're talking about, that but in getting on our map as a Vision Road, you know, how are we compensating the property owners for running it through their property? It's gonna impact the use of their property.
Well, it depends. If they stay as passive landowners, we'd have to condemn it. If they come in to develop it, then we'd work with them to provide credits in some way, mobility fee credits. And it would just depend on whether they come in for development or not. I mean, there is a concept we haven't talked about, but it didn't go over very well when we tried to do it on State Road 54, which is, there was a concept we talked about on State Road 54, which was building elevated managed lanes. Similar to what they did on Gandy Boulevard. I don't know if you're familiar with what they did. When we proposed that on State Road 54, it didn't go very well. But I do remember Commissioner Schrader at the time saying, why don't we try to do this on State Road 52? I only bring it up because we're now at that point. Because State Road 52 is looking like it's going to fail, and you know, maybe we should be having a discussion of should we be looking at building elevated managed lanes on 52.
I was thinking that driving down 52 the other day.
You could do that, because then if you do that, that builds additional capacity on 52 without having to build a parallel road somewhere else. But it does create additional visual impact to those on 52.
And it's quite costly.
It is costly.
Yeah, a lot more costly than.
It's not
lighting.
cheap. But in the case of 54, we actually had a company from Spain that was gonna build it as a toll road. It wasn't gonna make us pay anything, but it wasn't very politically popular. My only point is that it's feasible to do, but it does create additional visual impacts, and it's not cheap.
Well, this blue road up here, if we put that road in, it's also not gonna be cheap. So,
Yeah, it's not gonna be cheap, but it's certainly gonna be cheaper than building. I mean, they also, you've seen it on the crosstown, they do the same thing. The crosstown has an elevated managed lane.
right,
I mean, it can be done, but you're almost always building that as a toll facility, because it's almost impossible to finance something like that as a free road.
this is such a heavily rural area up here where this line is, and I see the need for it, but I just, you know, once you draw it on the map, you might as well have taken it from the property owner. So, because they can't use it, they can't do
Yeah,
anything with
my
it.
only point is that I think what, in Nick's defense, he was asked by the board, what are you going to do about 52?
Mhm.
When it fails, is we're allowing we collectively as a county, including this
Right,
board, are continuing to allow development on 52. And it appears, although we're not certain, that it may at some point result in the failures on 52, even at 6 lanes. So what is our plan going to be when that occurs? We didn't do a very good job, to Commissioner Moody's point, planning for this on 54. And so now we're potentially building flyovers.
I think that's why we're expressing the concern that all of a sudden, and what we're witnessing, what we witnessed along 54, what we're witnessing along 52, isn't it logical to think that will happen along St. Joe Road if all of a sudden we make it an arterial roadway?
Right, but at the same time, we can't just operate with blinders on and assume that 52 is just gonna magically not gonna become 54.
Because that will alleviate some of the volume of 52 by doing St. Joe in this blue dashed line.
Nick, did you contemplate elevated managed lanes at all for 52 as an alternative?
We did not.
Yeah, okay.
And again, in Nick's defense, I can see why he wouldn't.
No,
because
certainly, yeah, I'm just,
when we attempted to do, and he wasn't here when we tried this, so he would have no way of knowing this. But when the planning department tried to do this on State Road 54, they had a huge crowd and went in a huge auditorium where they basically spears were being thrown at them
Yeah.
because they were proposing something like this on State Road 54. I don't know if you all were here when this happened, but Richard Gearing was not a very popular person when he stood up
Very
and
well.
proposed this. So it does not surprise me that staff would not propose something like this on 52.
certainly, I mean,
But at the
It's-
same time, at least 52, there's less people that live on 52 now. So if you're going to propose something like this,
Now's the time.
this
Well,
would be the better time to do it.
and you might be more supportive, it's in an effort to maintain the rural area, which is a big deal for everybody in that general area, so.
But I think ultimately, I think what the board is looking for is, what are we going to do to make sure we don't repeat the mistakes we made on 54 on 52?
Certainly.
To go back to your concern about loss of property, I mean, I know it's an unpopular opinion, but that's why it made more sense in my mind for the dotted line to be further south through the well fields. Because I think you could mitigate for the road, and, you know, and then that's property that's not gonna be developed anyway. And then you have a better line across there as well.
You wanna go down to Pinellas County and tell them that?
Eh. Like I said, it's not a popular opinion.
I mean, the other challenge of like looking at the wetlands and the well field, that's a challenging
Yeah, you
route
still have to
altogether.
jog the road differently from the original.
I mean,
Might
the
have to
other
elevate.
opportunity we had obviously was Ridge Road, but we had the same problem there because east of Connerton, we have another well field, which may be equal to or worse than the problem we have with this.
I think one of the things we have to look at too is, you know, I hear Nick and that he sees a large employment, he's trying to connect to employment centers. But maybe we have to do a better job of matching the employment center to the employees. For instance, we've got warehousing and distribution out there in this employment center. And do we really think the people of Murata and Epperson are warehouse and distribution center workers? We got the wrong people living in the wrong area. If we want people to minimize trips and they wanna live and work in the same area, we gotta do a better job of trying to match that up. Building warehouses and distribution around doctors and lawyers doesn't fit with minimizing their commute.
It's like the only thing we're building. There's a brand new hospital going up at Overpass Road.
No, but if we wanna look on a square footage basis, I think what we tend to do, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be critical of anybody, is we tend to lump all employment into a boat, right? If somebody comes in and proposes a big distribution center, we say, hey, there's jobs, there's employment. But do the people that really live in that area, are they going to be the ones employed there? And I don't know what you do to fix that, it's just food for thought.
Shall we,
Well, unless you've got, I'll have a recommendation. This is staff's recommendation, so you need to come up with something else that you've got.
Well, we're gonna get this is a workshop, and there's gonna be a decision on the comp plan as it goes forward. Hopefully, they're listening to this discussion, and I guess what I'm saying is I think it would be helpful if we had more justification, not just postulation, about what our roadway network needs are. You know, okay, if I've got data and model runs and stuff that support doing this, that's a lot better justification. When the folks in the northeast rural area come in and start screaming about this thing, at least if there's something to back this up with. But right now, it is a hypothesis. Not saying it's a bad one, but it would be helpful to have something to back it up with. And I do agree with Mr. Gray that once you draw a line on the map, those people have effectively lost the use of their property without compensation. You may not have taken it, but once you make them reserve it, you've lost that use of it. And then, you know what's even worse? You lose the use of the property, and you still gotta pay the taxes on it.
That is bad.
Yeah.
Well,
So I had a
all
couple
I'm
of
saying
plans
about
coming.
that is that if you have a method to resolve those kind of concerns, if there's some compensation method that you can explain to people, you know, before you put the line on across their property, they're probably gonna be a little bit more acceptable of it than if they just see it as a taking.
I agree.
We all know we need it. We need the roadways.
Yeah, the difficulty with determining compensation this early though is that this is a conceptual alignment, so if a developer actually came in along that corridor and said, I wanna realign this road, we would probably let them.
Or
And
route study.
So now we've compensated somebody based on alignment, then we bought right away for something that, for a road we didn't, that doesn't match the alignment that is actually gonna be built.
Didn't we talk about that last week?
The advantage to it though is that if you buy the right of way today, it's probably gonna be a lot cheaper than it will be 20 years from now when you decide to build the road.
Well, in this Vision Road, you guys tried to stay along property lines, I would assume, right? Not cutting right through the middle of properties.
There's no way to tell by looking at this map where.
Yeah, I'd have, see it overlay against the parcels, I guess, but.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Um,
sorry, Terry. Go ahead.
We still need to go through the goals, objectives, and policies overview presentation.
Okay,
So,
we're running out of time, is that what you're telling me?
kind of. We have 15 minutes to lunch.
Okay, go ahead.
So, we've noted the Kitten Trail discussion in the St. Joe alignment
Fair enough.
discussion. So there'll probably be some additional conversations about this
Okay.
when we bring this back again. So, if you'll allow us, we'll transition over to the presentation and move through that so we can have any other discussion that may be necessary on the draft policies.
Good morning again. Hi, Mazzilli, Planning Development Economic Growth. And we're gonna keep things moving to the next slide. So Pasco Moves is the new name of the existing transportation element. This chapter is required under Chapter 163 of the Florida Statutes, and it provides a strategic framework to guide the delivery of multimodal transportation services, including performance standards, future system improvements, and coordination with local, regional, and state transportation plans. So what has changed in this update? Like we did with the other chapters, we have organized and streamlined the structure of the goals, objectives, and policies. The chapter now has 5 goals. We did not add any new goals, and we have 18 objectives, one of which is new, and 90 policies, including 14 new policies. We have also made extensive housekeeping changes. We consolidated overlapping policies, deleted outdated policies, and also deleted policies that are already addressed in the LDC, or they're addressed in other chapters. We also updated language for many of the policies to clarify the intent and remove any redundancies. We also made a couple edits to comply with statutory requirements. Overall, these updates make Pasco moves easier to navigate and more consistent and better aligned with the overall vision or long-term mobility goals for the county. So what that looks like in practice is reflected in the proposed new objective and policies, which I will be discussing in this slide. So rather than walking through each individual policies, I'll reserve that for the detailed discussion later. I want to highlight the key themes that these new objective and policies are centered around. So the first theme is the future-ready transportation. A major focus of this update is preparing Pasco County for the future of transportation. That includes integrating emerging technologies and planning for autonomous and connected vehicles. For example, policies moves 113, integration of emerging transportation technologies, and policy moves 114, autonomous and connected vehicle infrastructure, are really about making sure our transportation system can evolve as technology continues to change. We're also looking ahead to things like advanced air mobility and pilot programs, which policy moves 433 is addressing. So we're not just planning for today, but for what's coming next. The second theme is connected and multimodal network. There's a strong emphasis on creating a more connected and multimodal network. This includes policies such as the Active Transportation Plan, the Greenway, Trails, and Blueway Master Plan, and building out a connected bicycle and pedestrian system. We're also identifying transit emphasis corridors to highlight the land use and transportation connection, and also supporting regional transit, which are all aimed at giving residents more options beyond just driving. The next theme is safety and complete streets. So safety is another core theme throughout these policies, of course anchored by new transportation safety objective moves 1.7. Supporting policies like complete streets, safe streets for all, and safe routes to school reinforce designing roadways that are safe for all users. This is really about creating a system that works safely for drivers, pedestrian, bicyclists, and transit users alike. And lastly, the fourth theme is standards and implementation. So these policies, or these new policies, focus on how we implement and support the transportation system. For example, ultimate lanes and right-of-way standard, and their policy moves at 1.2.5 help ensure we're planning appropriately for future capacity, while policies on public outreach and education help keep the community informed and engaged. So together, all these themes ensure that the vision is not just planned, but actually carried out. And just to note, these themes are already existing in the existing transportation element. So these policies only reinforce and add a little bit more emphasis on what we're trying to do or carrying out the vision. And speaking of the vision, this slide shows how the goals, objectives, and policies of Pasco moves directly reflect the community vision, especially around the theme of mobility enhancement. So when we did our workshops and open houses in the last 2.5 years. The community asked for safer crossings, better network connectivity, stronger transit links and connections, and expanded sidewalks and trails. And this table demonstrates how each of those community priorities translates directly into a specific moves policy within the chapter. We're not just acknowledging the feedback, we are embedding it into a policy framework that guides the long-term planning, development, review, and capital improvements. And this concludes my letter presentation or overview about the Pasco moves. Now I'll open it up for discussion about these policies.
Okay, can we go through the 14 new ones?
Yes, sir. Specific theme, or you just want to call out the ones that you want to talk about?
At the risk of sounding rude, and I don't mean to be, this got thrown at us days before the workshop. If there's 14 policies, we could go through them.
Okay. Will you be following along with me on the,
Hopefully.
okay, the strike through? Patty, would you please pull it up? Thank you. All right, so let's look at the first policy. First brand new policy. 1.1.3. Integration of emerging transportation technology. So 113 and 114, both of these policies pretty much support alignment with FDOT initiatives and prepares the county for what's coming in terms of emerging mobility technologies, while of course allowing flexible, non-mandatory evaluation of future transportation needs. Do we have any comments about the language? Is it something that we want to keep as we look ahead at all these technologies?
I think addressing it is a good thing.
Me too. I think I brought it up last time we met and was asking the same
Absolutely.
thing.
You
What
sure
are we
did.
planning for drones and that kind of thing? I see advanced air mobility included. That's great.
Okay, perfect. So while we are talking about drones and air mobility, we're gonna go to policy 5.1.10, and that's on page 46. So that's about emerging mobility pilot programs. So we just want to make sure that we're considering participating in any pilot programs in partnership with FDOT, regional agencies, universities, FAA, of course, to evaluate any transportation technologies, for autonomous vehicle, connected vehicle system, and advanced air mobility. We also added a policy about air taxis, and that should be policy.
5110 is the emergency. There you go. Advanced air mobility services.
I'm sorry, say that again, Derek?
I said advanced air mobility services to his point.
Yes.
That's great.
Okay.
It's coming.
We mentioned vertiports in the definition, and
Yes. So I added a definition.
where are those co-located facilities to some of our airports, or I'm getting a little bit granular on that, but just curious what the vision for something like that would be.
Vertiports are an interesting animal. They can be located at airports, certainly. They can be as independent as even helipads, as we've known them in the past. but vertiports can also be integrated in general commercial infrastructure. We've actually dealt with Walmart and their establishment of small-scale vertiports when they convert portions of their parking lot for drone delivery services, essentially. So the vertiport siting is going to be driven mostly by the private sector in that sense, but it's also going to be regulated by the FAA in terms of launch and then airspace, the type of airspace that they're going to fly in, and then the routing of the delivery is also going to be controlled by FAA. What the county is going to be involved in on our side of the equation will mainly be about making sure that the surrounding environment can retain compatibility with the vertiport. So that can happen in a couple of different ways. Obviously, drones are a little bit more agile in their flight as compared to an airplane that needs a runway protection zone and all that kind of fun stuff. So a drone will be able to launch vertically and land vertically. So when the county is looking at that kind of stuff, we're going to be looking at how does landscaping and nearby buildings, how are those impacted, but also in the opposite direction. Do we want to be screening vertiports? How do we dress the vertiport up? That sort of information. Also noise regulation, how to address overall appearance and other nuisance factors that may be involved in the vertiport. So I don't know if that answers your question 100%. It is sort of a new realm of planning.
It's brand new, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the large commercial nodes seem to make sense, outlet centers, all
Right.
that sort of stuff. Seem to, which are gonna be generally located next to, heavily transferred roadways. To offtake some of that volume from the roadways, it makes sense to have those more of the larger commercial nodes and the like, so.
But the one thing that we won't be able to do is control flight path.
Right.
So it's not as if you can say that, great, Target or Walmart, they set up their little vertiports in excess parking lots or wherever they may put them, and then say, okay, you can only fly down the State Route 54 corridor and then turn where the streets are and then fly to your delivery like that, like a truck would, right? You can't control that. That's all FAA controlled, and those are going to be basically as the crow flies, come and go. And deconfliction also takes place by FAA.
David has a question.
Jerry, definition of bike lane, still some heartburn with this. First of all, I thought we were moving away from this definition or getting rid of bike lanes. I really like your definition of multi-purpose lane because it's much more flexible about what can go in the lane. But your definition of bike lane says for the exclusive use of bicyclists. So the way I read that, that means that if I'm in my vehicle and I temporarily use it because my car is broken down, I apparently violated the comp plan.
Or if someone's using it with a
You get a
electric
ticket for that.
scooter
Or for something,
an e-bike.
electric scooter, or, I don't know why we have to put in our comp plan that it's for the exclusive use of bicyclists. I'm not sure why we need to do have any lane that's for the exclusive use of anybody. The multi-purpose lane definition is fantastic because it talks about multiple functions and it's not limited to any particular function.
You could say it's not designed for cars.
Right, it says it's context sensitive, it gives you much more flexibility about what can go in the lane. And then you have this very restrictive definition of bike lane that basically says only one person can use it.
I mean, further down, there's a multi-purpose lane.
So why are we being so restrictive on who can use a bike lane?
I mean,
Yeah.
multi-purpose is defined.
I think it was in keeping with the actual titling of this type of facility, bike lane. But it's a good point that you raise, and I think the definition could probably be without the word exclusive.
Well, first of all, do we even need, I mean, I don't even know if we're still calling things bike lanes, but if we are, even if we are, because I'd rather we just call it multi-purpose lane, because that's a better, I actually like that definition much better.
Mr. Chair, if I,
Yes.
it's a width issue. If you only have 4 or 5 feet, it's not wide enough to allow the other uses that are described in the multi-purpose lane. And we have some bike lanes that exist, so we're just describing an existing condition. That doesn't mean we're promoting the construction of additional facilities like that. But if you only have 4 or 5 feet designated, then the only type of vehicle permitted in that area is a bicycle.
Well, why can't a scooter
Right.
go use it?
A low-speed neighborhood electric vehicle would work just fine.
Well, I think his point, probably it's too narrow for the golf carts, but
Right.
there,
Not an
we
e-bike.
have this whole issue of now of what's a bike, now that e-bikes are out on the scene. There's a whole issue of what's a moped, what's a motorcycle, what's a bike, what's an e-bike. But I could see where
Or scooters.
perhaps it's more appropriate for an e-bike that goes 35 miles an hour to ride in that bicycle lane than it is to ride on the sidewalk.
Mhm.
But I guess my larger point is that to me, the bike lane, I understand that its predominant use is for bicyclists. But in an emergency, it does function as a breakdown shoulder. In reality. I'm talking about reality. Sure. And so, for you to say that it's for the exclusive use of bicyclists means that you're ignoring that reality.
I think staff hears you. I'm looking at their edits, and they're just striking the word exclusive
trying to
from the
understand-
definition to recognize that that area of the roadway
I'm
could
trying to
be
understand what's
utilized.
the consequence, David, what are you trying to get at? What's the ramification of what, there's obviously something about this language that you're concerned
Well, in theory-
I'm
creates a
concerned,
problem.
I guess it's the lawyer, okay? I'm concerned that somebody uses it as a breakdown lane, if somebody rear ends them while they're in the breakdown lane, the creative personal injury lawyer looks at it and says, you were never supposed to be in there.
Okay.
You were violating the law being in this lane because that was exclusively for bicyclists.
I know.
The issue I see is someone on an e-scooter getting ticketed driving down the bike lane. They're doing 25 miles an hour on an e-scooter, which is not suitable for a sidewalk.
Also, you can fit a golf cart on a.
Some of them you
But I
can.
mean, that's my primary concern. My secondary concern is, I don't know why an e-scooter can't use it.
Right.
Well, me too, I don't know why an e-scooter can't use it versus I think they ought to be there rather than on the sidewalks. Although I would prefer personally that we have the multi-use paths and get the bike lanes off the road
Also true.
until they wanna pass, well, I think we have laws about texting and driving, until they actually wanna enforce laws about texting and driving, then I would say you must be suicidal to ride in a bike lane, but.
I mean, if it says something that it's designed to be predominantly used for bicyclists, I don't, maybe that's some softer words.
Intended,
I don't know what the right word is, but it's the word exclusive use of bicyclists that's got me concerned.
or can you just say
One
intended
idea.
for the use of bicycles?
You can also state a
Get rid of the word
diameter
exclusive.
as well, so you could say, you know, if the portion of roadway is 5 feet or less, then that is intended for the use of bicycles.
Or say it's
e-scooter.
designed to accommodate bicyclists or
Right.
something to that effect.
Can I ask this question? What is the necessity to have a definition of a bike lane in the comp plan?
Because we have policies that, talk about bike lanes, so that's why we
Can we
use
go
that
over
definition.
those?
I think one possible answer to this is a portion of the roadway designed to accommodate the use of bicyclists and other 1- to 2-wheeled vehicles such as scooters, e-bikes, etc.
That would be good.
Typically marked with striping, pavement symbols, and signage.
I think that works.
Yeah, to echo what Nick said, I mean, it's a legacy problem, right? It's not, this is a legacy problem, it's not the future is a multi-use path.
Can we-
That's the preference.
Just briefly go over what policies this definition affects.
Yeah, I can.
You could even state that in the definition, that it's a legacy.
And where I'm
Right.
going with that is,
Where-
are we
Portion of the road.
promoting more bike lanes?
If you look at policy moves 1.6.10, connected bicycle and pedestrian system, Pasco County shall establish a safe, connected, and efficient system of bike lanes.
Page 26.
Page 26 of 50, sorry. 1610. So the policy says Pasco County shall establish a safe, connected, and efficient system of bike lanes, sidewalks, multi-use path, and multi-use purpose lanes.
So if we are phasing out bike lanes and going towards the multi-use path, should we still be saying this in the new
Good
comp plan?
question.
I don't think so, mainly because we don't know what the next 25 years will be like. You might see innovations in bike lanes for local roads even. You have urbanized environments that have bike lanes on local roads, they have sharrows on local roads, so depending on what might take place over the next 25 years, I don't think you'll see a bike lane, let's say, on an arterial facility or on a collector facility when we've got code and we've got plans that call for multi-use lane, multi-purpose lanes and multi-use paths. But I don't think the bike lane is
Gonna go
done.
completely.
I don't
Well,
think the
I
bike lane
think
is done.
the other problem is that this is saying you're gonna establish a system, and some of that system might be what's already on the ground.
Right.
Correct.
And so what's already on the ground might be a bike lane.
Makes sense.
I think what your concern might be better addressed in the typical sections that we adopt for future roadways. I mean, that's where you probably don't wanna see a bike lane
Right.
for the new roadways we're building.
And that's effectively what Nick was saying, that's not the preferred section.
Right. So how do we call that out in this section?
I'm not sure if this is anywhere in this element where we adopt the typical sections. I don't think we do.
No.
Okay.
That's a different. Nick, are we gonna be re-looking at our typical roadway sections at any point?
Yes, that process is underway.
And so will that come back to this group at some point?
So procedurally, I don't recall if the 2019 board resolution was presented to the planning commission first, but whatever the process should be, if the planning commission wants an opportunity to provide input, we'd be happy to share that.
A road
where do
section
the-
is an LDC thing, or is it a comp plan thing?
So in Pasco County, the typical sections are established by board resolution that was adopted in 2019 and covers our typical countywide arterial and collector roads. And then we also have a number of unique situations, master roadway plans within Connected City and villages of Pasadena Hills, as well as the, some MPUD rezoning applications propose typical sections that conflict with those 2019 standards, if you will. What we're trying to do as part of this update is standardize we talked about this last week, standardize the right-of-way footprint and corresponding number of lanes on our arterial and collector roadway network, and then use the standardized content in the comp plan to present typical sections for those simplified set of options. The 2-lane is either gonna be a 60 or a 70 or an 80-foot footprint, and then we'll show you what those 60, 70, 80-foot footprints will contain within that land area as part of a
So I
typical
think
section presented to the board.
Regardless of how it was adopted, Nick, you probably should bring it to the planning commission.
It says a
And
board
that's fine.
resolution,
I have
the
no
right
objection to
place
doing
for
that.
typical road sections?
That's what I said. It should be in either LDC or comp, but it sounds like it should be in the LDC.
Where do other counties typically house their typical roadway sections?
So it varies.
Okay.
Some, you know, I mean, candidly, Pasco is becoming a very large county that has a lot of small county practices still in place. Large counties tend to delegate responsibility for establishing and updating the design
Truest
content.
statement said today.
You know, large counties tend to delegate that to a staff member, like a county administrator, county engineer position that says, you decide what can legally be and safely be constructed within our county rights of way. In Pasco, that authority tends to reside with the commission. And so we are protecting that practice in the way that we're proposing to update that content.
Is anybody else putting that in the LDCs or the comp plan?
I think what we're intending to do, with respect to the LDC, is we have reference to and I'm gonna get the phrase wrong, a development manual. Is that the right phrase? Okay, so we would incorporate the board-adopted typical sections into that development manual.
Okay.
There are already references in our land development code to the
So it's
2019
Sort of
approvals.
under the LDC.
Kind of, sort of, but it can be amended via updated board resolution as opposed to a full ordinance change to the code itself. A little more flexibility, but again, requiring commission approval, not staff, not a staff signature, if you will. So
Okay.
that's the process that we follow in Pasco.
So actually, Terry, why don't you bring their attention to 1.2.3? This talks about the whole process that Nick somewhat identified. The all man has some thoughts on that one. Page 16.
Page 16 of 50. But first, let me tell you what the future transportation system includes. So if you go to policy 121, page 14, or I'm sorry, 1.2, objective 1.2. So the future transportation system includes the corridor preservation table, okay, the ultimate number of lanes map, the ultimate right-of-way width map, and the roadway vision map, and the active transportation map. So we grouped all these maps along with the table under one terminology, future transportation system, instead of repeating them over and over, okay? So now that we have that in context, we can go to page 16. Page 16, policy moves 1.2.3.
So in this particular policy, we're sort of moving in the direction that was suggested by the county engineer. Pasco County shall administratively update the future transportation system, all those maps in the table, when appropriate through procedures established and administered by authorized personnel within the Development Services branch in coordination with other departments as necessary. Administrative updates shall be made only under the following conditions. A change in the number of lanes on a roadway. B, construction of a new roadway shown on the corridor preservation table moves 3.
Yep.
C, extension of an existing roadway which changes the function of that roadway. D, adoption of special access limitations on a roadway which significantly impacts the function of the roadway. Or E, revision of an urban-rural status of a roadway. Any proposed change in the functional classification of a roadway not caused by a condition listed above shall be considered an amendment, not an administrative update, and shall be adopted only by action of the Board of County Commissioners pursuant to procedures established by the county. The county shall permit the appeal of any such administrative decision regarding the update to the future transportation system to the Board of County Commissioners.
So what's the difference in procedure between an administrative update and an amendment?
It's basically marking the data, updating the data on on the maps and in the system.
So both are a resolution of the county commission, correct?
No,
No,
no, they're saying administrative updates are basically done by staff.
Okay, but an amendment is,
That's the comp plan amendment process.
yeah,
public
okay.
hearings.
I'm just using the example of changing the typical roadway section that would
I
normally
don't
go
think
before the
typical
county.
roadway section changes have anything to do with this.
Okay,
These are talking about changing the maps in the comp plan.
gotcha.
The typical roadway sections were never in the comp plan to begin with.
with the exception of the typicals in Connected City, for example, or VOPH.
Yes.
But those had policies
Yes.
that enabled flexibility built into them.
That's why I thought we segued to this section, because that's what we were talking about before.
I'm not sure why we segued to this section. Because
That's where I was confused.
this section does not address the typical sections.
Oh, but it does address, I think the segue was,
Process.
the process as the county is evolving,
Okay.
the amount of information updating that needs to happen.
Okay.
You could bog down a bunch of public hearings over
Little stuff, yeah.
little stuff, yeah.
Okay.
So I think before we were going through the list of the,
New policy.
yeah, the new
yes.
policies, right?
Okay, so let's go to objective 1.7, and that is on page 27.
So what's
that-
what's an
okay.
example of a safety initiative?
Yes, so this whole objective is just about safety and complete streets and ensuring that we have policies that support safe streets for all, safe routes to school. Liam, you had a question about that earlier?
Yes, sorry, I did. What a setup. There were two policies that were being deleted, 1.53 and 1.58, that had to deal with pedestrian bicycle systems. And there was language in there that didn't get translated to any of the new policies. And that language was basically special emphasis given to connecting attractors of children, such as parks and schools with residential areas. I was just wondering if we can maybe add that language back into somewhere in here. And I think when we kind of spoke, I think you might have had a section that you were looking at to add that to.
Right. So the intent of those policies that were deleted are, or is captured in 1.7.3. However, we can definitely bring that language back and add it to 1.6.10, connected bicycle and pedestrian system.
Yeah, and I actually think 1.6.10 is kind of what 1.5 and 1.8 turned into.
Right.
So if we can maybe just add that language somehow back in there, emphasizing
The
parks
school
and schools.
connections.
Yes.
Okay. Will do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But with regards to the safe routes to schools, I didn't have any problems with those changes.
Thank you, Liam. Planning Commission members, are we okay with the language that's under 1.7, objective 1.7? Railway crossing safety is also under that objective.
So-
and to develop and,
Oh, okay.
and implement.
To pursue funding, to develop, and to implement. Okay.
Derek?
To go back to my question, so what's an example of a safety initiative? Would it be, enhancing crossing gates at a railroad crossing, or?
Yes, definitely. It would be something like that for sure.
Another example would be the one that we talked about earlier in the meeting, the pedestrian improvements that were put down on Kitten Trail, for example, as part of a safe route to school. That's on Cobra Way there.
An initiative like making sure the sidewalk was on the right side of the road for where most of the pedestrian traffic is, that type of thing.
So there's some language in 171 says, implementing complete street strategies for all the roadway construction and roadway improvement. Is that something that we want to consider for all projects necessarily, or?
It does say where feasible.
Yeah, it comes back to where feasible, so it's like.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that goes to the discussion of the typicals, because a lot of those typicals, they're including the various infrastructure necessary for the type of facility that we're planning. But if you just look at some of the typicals in Connected City, for example, or in really VOPH would be a better example, there you'll see the attempt through the typicals to illustrate the complete street framework. Yeah. So yeah, in a sense, yes, we are looking at complete streets in pretty much every scenario. In an industrial scenario, a complete street's going to look a little different than in a commercial scenario or in a residential.
Much like the word ensure, all starts to make more.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
Yeah. Let's look at five 5.1.9. That's 46, page 46. Regional rapid transit. So we added this policy to ensure that we're coordinating with all the appropriate agencies, FDOT, MPO, local governments, to support potential regional rapid transit system, including but not limited to the express bus, bus rapid transit, and passenger rail. So as you may be aware, the US 19 Advantage study is undergoing right now, and we have been in coordination with Pinellas County and the MPO to pretty much ensure that all the stops for the rapid transit or for the express bus is coordinated with the land use and with the proposed densities and intensities that we're proposing as part of the 2050 mixed-use flu nodes additions. What do we think about that policy?
Great.
Mr. Moody, you've been quiet.
Should you consider that to be silence is good?
Yes.
Yeah, true.
Don't poke the
Well,
bear.
Now you're gonna get them to talk.
I laugh every time we talk about passenger rail.
You never know. It will happen. Could
Well,
happen.
What happened, and this probably happened before you were born or when you were a young child, we used to have rail, okay? And in the 1990s, we decided it was smart to tear up all those rails and turn them into bike trails. And then when we decided we needed rail transit, we said, oh my God, we can't afford any right-of-way for rails. We had it, we turned them into bike trails. I hope that we'll think about those decisions as we go forward.
We live and learn, so. Okay, let's see. I think, 1.6.1. I believe I touched on most of the new policies, but let's go to 1.6.1. And that is 25, page 25. Pasco County shall consider developing and implementing an active transportation plan to increase the safety, efficiency, and comfortability of Pasco County's active transportation network. So we are currently working with the MPO to have this plan in action, or we're developing the plan to have it in action at some point in the near future. So this policy is pretty much just reinforcing that endeavor or initiative.
What's the active transportation plan?
The active transportation plan is essentially the mobility framework for non-motorized movement within the county. So it's basically the paths and trails plan for the county. Generally, you can see the network fill in through the use of our typicals and the understanding that a lot of the collectors and arterials are going to have multi-purpose paths, etc. But then there's trail networks and path networks that are off right-of-way. And so I shouldn't say off right-of-way because they are their own right-of-way. They are outside of the roadway system. And so the active transportation, or the active transportation plan is identifying those, and then what types of policies are tactically specific in particular areas for the different facilities. That the comprehensive plan is just identifying here, and then another plan coming in focus in the future will help facilitate the development and the implementation and development of the network that we're seeing on the screen.
There have been studies, and I don't want you to take this question wrong. Are there studies that look at how many people actually use the trail networks for the purpose of transportation rather than just recreation? In other words, how many people actually use those trails to commute to work or to go get their necessities of life, their groceries and their clothing and their... I don't have a problem with providing multi-use paths, and they provide a great recreational opportunity. I question whether there's a substantive amount of the population that actually uses those facilities as a means of transportation.
There are studies. I would say that the genesis of the active transportation plan from a couple of years ago was a discussion between planning and the Parks and Recreation Natural Resources Department in identifying a commuter network of bicycling. This is before the explosion of e-bikes and whatever, but of bicycling on the one hand for commuter purposes, and then bicycling on the other hand for recreational and lycra movement, lycra-clad movements. So both networks could coexist with one another and plug into one another. How does that happen? And the discussion rolled and turned into the active transportation plan that's being called out here in the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, thought it was funny because you missed the pun that you made about the quote explosion of e-bikes.
Through water.
Yeah, no, I did think
Feel
about
like
it
a
as I said it.
I have zero problem with providing the recreational opportunities of the trail networks and the multi-use paths. And like what I'm asking myself, I'm questioning, there seems to have been, over the last decade, this philosophy that I'll build all these things and there's gonna be all these people that are gonna commute, like putting bike lanes in the roadway. There's gonna be all these people that commute to work on the bicycle and that's gonna relieve traffic congestion. And I just personally find that that's a fallacy. And I ask myself, you know, in July, August, and September, when it's 90 degrees, and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to have the thunderstorm that rains 4 inches per hour. I mean, how many people are going to use that as a means of transportation? I question whether we put too much focus on bicycles as a mean, and e-bikes as a means of transportation for the masses. There may be a few people here and there.
I mean, there's gonna be a lot more in urban areas, you know, you'll see more of them downtown,
Right.
Richey than you will on St. Joe Road.
You're correct. And I agree, and probably in those urban environments, that is appropriate. But in general, our county is more of a suburban county. We don't have many urban town centers. And so I question, you know, do we put too much emphasis on that? And I'm not saying don't make bike trails and multi-use paths. I think those are great recreational opportunities. I just think sometimes we kid ourselves that they're actually transportation facilities.
It seems to me in some ways that the explosion of the electric bikes and transportation, I mean, they really aren't. They aren't for exercise or recreation.
No.
They're to get from one place to another. And I think, you know, to a certain extent, the fact that there is an explosion of these types of vehicles tends to me to say that people are going to start using them for transportation because of the because they're cheaper to operate. You know.
Sure.
Can I add too, Mr. Chairman, that in the early planning days of active transportation back in the early 2000s, there was considerable discussion at that time about the impact of high gas prices. This was obviously before the 2008 recession, and we saw gas prices reach, you know, I think $3, $4 in some parts of the country at that time. And there was a lot of, that generated a lot of discussion about active transportation planning, and it became the mainline discussion, if you will, in planning conferences and whatnot back in the 2008, 2010 years. You know, we could be facing a very similar challenge of permanently increased gas prices. And I do think that e-bikes are probably going to be a viable alternative to, I would say, commutes within 5 miles of your starting point. Like, you're not going to get in your car to do that if gas is like $8 a gallon, assuming world events can calm themselves down.
We're gonna drill, baby, drill.
We already are drilling.
It's a good
Drilling,
thing.
baby, drilling.
Yeah.
And the electricity to charge those e-bikes comes from those same wells that produce that gasoline.
Right. Or coal.
Unless you have solar panels.
Or solar.
Huh?
Unless you have solar panels.
Yeah.
You're going to start using nuclear.
How long does it take to charge that e-bike with you charge your car with one of those?
Like charged my car when I was solar panel.
How long
During
does
the
it
day.
take?
What?
How long does it take?
4 hours?
With one panel for your car?
Oh, I haven't, my entire roof is full of panels.
That's what I'm getting at, okay? I mean,
Takes
it's
less.
not like you can,
I have enough panels that I was almost charged additional insurance to be a power plant.
You sell it back to the company.
Is this a new map?
Yes, this is a new map.
Two thoughts. One is having Kitten Trail on this map allow us to meet any potential pedestrian needs if it's not a vision road? That's a concern about having on the vision road map. Would it cover any potential pedestrian needs along Kitten Trail with this new map and the new active transportation plan? Saving that for later discussion, we'll talk this afternoon probably, but, and the other comment I just have is, just notice that all the green areas are county park facilities. Is all that on the east side county park facility technically, or?
Conservation, it's the
Green
county
swamp.
park.
Yeah,
It's
all the state.
a state park, maybe.
If it's just, I don't know if it just needs, maybe change that label, because that's something that's county parks. It's all, it could be public park facilities or
Yeah,
public land or whatever.
yeah.
Wait, where's the name Sun Trail coming from? I don't recall that being.
That's the state grant.
That's what?
I think that's the funding source.
I'm never heard.
Where is it?
Sun Trail.
State funding source, Sun Trail.
So,
Never heard
Mr.
of-
Chair, if I
never heard
could,
of the term Sun Trail.
regarding the Sun Trail, it's an acronym. It stands for Shared Use Non-Motorized Trail. It's a program created by the state legislature to divert some portion, a small portion, 25 million per year, of state dock stamp revenue to the funding of a statewide trail network of paved facilities. Really to incentivize counties and cities to construct their portion of those facilities in order to implement this
So
statewide
is it a
network.
cost share with funding from the state to build these with the county, or?
Again, it's 25 million per year. Each district is allocated portions of that total amount, and local governments are able to submit grant applications for construction funding from that, with the expectation that the local governments would then be obligated to maintain the facilities that have been constructed with that revenue.
And you said they're non-motorized?
Yeah, the N in Sun Trail stands for non-motorized, so it's a shared use, non-motorized trail network.
One of them's on Starkey and there's
So,
motorized
No
stuff.
scooters or e-bikes?
no e-bikes.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Electric motorized.
Where's the kaboom?
Okay.
Okay.
If I may direct your attention to one last new policy, and that's on page 18. Patty. It's policy moves 1.2.5, ultimate lanes and ultimate right-of-way standards. So we have added this new table to pretty much establish the ultimate lanes and right-of-way widths by contacts and jurisdiction. And pretty much the intent of this table is to set clear build-out to standards for corridor preservation and design.
So this will affect what the typical road section will look like. Although we've discussed that that's a separate process.
What page is this on?
18, I'm sorry, I mean 18. 1.2.5.
Where do we have, so, where do we include state roadways in our comp plan? So it's not controlled by the state DOT, or?
Mr. Chair, for two reasons. First, because they're part of our transportation network, and we rely on them to move the majority of people. They carry the heaviest volume of traffic. But second, and really the practical reason, is if there is a state facility that has not been built to its ultimate condition, this comp plan policy gives us the ability to obligate development along that corridor to convey right-of-way so that those facilities can, so that we can preserve the footprint needed for those widenings, like along a US 301 or US 41 to the north. We see development north of 52 where we intend to make that an ultimate 4 or 6 lane facility. If we didn't have this policy in the comp plan, the state we would not be able to ask for conveyance of right-of-way, and the state would incur a much higher cost in constructing those facilities.
Thank you, Nick.
Basically, state does not control land use, we control land use.
Question about the note at the bottom of the table. It says, any future edits to table moves -3 shall conform to the standards in table moves -2. Aren't you in effect tying the hands of the future commission in this document?
Just thinking about it.
Move -3.
Mr. Chair, if I could address that
Because
as
the
well.
edits all have to be made by the BCC, right?
Yeah, so the intention of this statement in the note to the table is, this is where we were talking about standardizing the potential options for right-of-way width. So if you want to be a 2-lane road as a collector in the urban area, then this table says you either need to have a 60 or a 70 or an 80-foot right-of-way. Those are the choices available to you if we want to create a new 2-lane collector road in an urban or suburban area. If an elected body like the Board of County Commissioners wants to say, actually, I'd rather have a 2-lane road in 120 feet of right-of-way, as part of the amendment, they would delete the footnote and say, that rule, we don't like it. We're just going to strike that and amend the table to put in a 120-foot right-of-way. But what we're trying to do is say, please, as you go forward in the future, constrain yourself to these options so that we can create meaningful standards and implement a system that can be relatively stable over time.
To answer your legal question, no, it doesn't bind the future board because the future board can amend that note.
Where is table 3?
It seems to me like you're telling me, well, you shall do this.
But
John
the
doesn't
future
look
board,
like they know what to do.
the future board can just amend that shall statement if they want to.
Then what's the point?
So,
I think Nick is just trying to say that there's, it's a check. It signifies an intent to standardize.
So where does table moves 3 live, to Elizabeth's point? It's a
I
separate
think
table?
So
move
that's-
3 is the table of all of the individual roadways.
Okay,
That's the one that we presented last
okay.
Thursday.
Yeah, I wasn't here at the last one, sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
120
20.
some pages.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yes, we do not want to put that in this.
any other comments from anyone?
Just a question for Nick. The model run that was done, was it a 2050 model run?
Yes.
Okay,
Short answer.
that answers my question.
And move it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I've done enough moving with moves, so if you feel like you have to
Move on.
move on.
I think we had a motion, did we?
Yeah, I was gonna make a motion to recess for lunch and
Okay.
Yeah,
We're
in
gonna-
our following meeting.
We're gonna adjourn because we'll have to open up a new meeting.
Open a new meeting for the, because we're doing workshop after the meeting too, yes?
No,
This is
No,
it?
this is it.
Okay, I had both on my calendar, so that's good.
It was just in case we did not finish the morning session.
Oh, gotcha. Well then, I move adjournment of this workshop.
I have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lee? Bring you lunch?
I did.
Yeah, he's got him right there by his.
Not that. That's emergency food.
That's emergency food, yeah, that's ration.
Yes,
It's like your MREs.
yes.